Talk radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening. How you doing? How you doing? Fade to Black. Today is Monday, May 26th, 2025. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Let's do this, man. Yeah, kicking off another week here on Fade to Black. This week's a short week. I'll explain everything in a second. Tonight, Christopher A. Johnston is with us. JD, he is an attorney. Tonight's show, Roswell, the truth on trial. That's right. We've got a courtroom set up tonight. Get ready for that, kids. Tomorrow night, Dr. Mark Carlotto is with us. We're going to be talking about his book, An Inconvenient Theory. And then Wednesday night, our once-a-month AMA AJA, where you get to ask me anything. That's right, OAM. Once a month, we do this. It's going down on Wednesday night. Thursday night, we're off air. That's right, because we're going to be at Contact in the Desert. Now, I do have three major events coming up. I actually have 5, but 3 for now. Coming up this week, Contact in the Desert. That's May 29th through June 2nd, right here in Palm Springs, California. After that, I go south. Everything going down in June, it seems like. Head south to Peru for the Inca Celebration of the Sun with Brian Forrester. This tour is sold out, but we do have a second tour coming up in November. The links for that are below. I come back from that for the Psy Games, and that is August 1st through the 3rd, 2025. In Charlottesville, Virginia, the Psychic Olympics. In between all of that, I've got to film my TV show, so that's going down, and a couple of other things. June is a jammed up month, and so is August. But you know what? It's the life I chose, and that's how it's going down. It's just the way it is. I love it. I love it. Tonight, we're going to hold court right here on Fade to Black. Christopher A. Johnston is our guest tonight. He is a lawyer. And tonight, we're going to do Roswell, the truth on trial. He is a trial attorney. We were just talking about that right before the show. And tonight, we're going to put Roswell on the stand. And we're going to look into all of this. And you are going to be the jury. All right? Now, he's a veteran trial attorney, certified civil trial specialist with over 20 years of experience, an 8-time Super Lawyer and MUFON contributor. He also holds certifications in astrobiology and space law and is a founding member of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. We'll be talking about all of that and more tonight. And I would like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, Christopher Johnston. And now, shall it be Christopher or Chris?
Chris is just fine.
Chris is just fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start there, Chris. Before we get started, you get the first time guest disclaimer.
Okay.
So yeah, and you're a trial attorney, so you know what's going on here. The disclaimer is such, and then you have to accept for us to move forward. And if you want, you can have your attorney review it, and then you can do that. But it is this. Christopher, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends. But we're going to end as friends. There you go. You have to accept so we can move forward.
I accept. Sounds perfect.
Now, excellent. Thank you for that, Your Honor. So for everybody, just I'm going to do this just once. Move your head slightly. Keep going. Look at this. We are in court. Yeah, this is great. And the subject for tonight. Oh, I do want to let everybody know. Oh, there goes. As you can see, I have the Peanuts theme as my ringer. Everybody just heard that. Yeah, that's my private life being exposed to everyone. Yes, I have the Peanuts theme as my ringer, which has just been silenced. I talk about this a lot. And if I have a guest that's got a lot of evidence and has done a lot of research, it doesn't matter if it's Egypt or life after death or the subject of UFOs. I often ask them, if you were in court, what would be the best piece of evidence that you would push, into the center of the table? I think that it is a legitimate question, that I think that we have some very strong cases here that would actually hold up in court. And now we're going to do that tonight. So I'm going to ask you, you're a trial attorney, you're an attorney, you run with that, you hold a bar card, right?
Right.
Why this subject? Is it that powerful for you? Would you take this to court?
Well, sure. I would take this to court, depending on what side of it. But it's kind of a twofold question, Jimmy. So why Roswell? I think is what I heard first. For me, I'm a lifelong ufologist. It's always been a passion of mine, but that doesn't necessarily pay the bills. So in my real job, I'm an attorney. So over the years, a lot of what I work on is very, very complex, talking, complex litigation, insurance disputes, things like that really helped me sharpen a real analytical look at evidence and how we can deconstruct different issues. So after, as you said, I'm coming up on 25 years here, I finally, kids are out of the house and things like that. I was able to blend my two passions, kind of the paranormal, the unknown, with the rigors of a trial, which can be applied to anything. So I thought, well, doggone it, it's a great idea and a great way for me to blend my interests. It's something a lot of times when I do these interviews, people say, well, what do you hope folks get out of that? Well, especially in this day and age where, well, if it's on the internet, it must be real, right? So my hope is to help people develop, or even just take that step back and take a rigorous look at what they're being told. We hear about the drive-by media, that kind of thing, headlines here, headline there. Take a stop, and look at what's going on and look at what's being said. And as my dear sweet mom always said, consider the source. So that's the real goal of this book, and I used, very intentionally this kind of UFO setting because it's a passion to get people hopefully a little bit more critical thought into not just UFOs, but into everything.
Now, here is the elephant in the room.
Yep.
Have you had your own experience? Have you had your own sighting?
I have had my own experience, and didn't expect to talk about it, but yeah, I'll share it. It's interesting. It goes back to 1990. So I'm 55 now. So I happen to be 21 years old. I went out for a night with a friend of mine, actually one of my roommates. And it was this work deal. And, we're 21 and trying to be kind of grown up and mature about it. So we went, and he and I each had one beer, which, back when I was 21, and for me, that was unheard of, but we each had one beer and we left. The next morning, one of our roommates came in and was like, what in the heck were you guys doing? We got home at 4:00 in the morning. We have our roommate to witness it. We had employees at the function who saw us leave at 9:00 in the evening, and neither of us any recall of that missing time. Little shots of memories of being in a field. This gets real weird. And I was telling him, I'm like, boy, I have this vision of being in a field. And he's like, yeah, I kind of do too. We went outside and there was his car, and up under the bumpers and the wheel wells, it was all full of grass up and under there. So we certainly had some experience and missing time of, 7 hours.
And okay,
that's
it.
it.
Now let's flip this around.
Sure.
You're in the witness box.
Okay.
All right. You're up there, and I don't know. Am I prosecutor or am I the defense attorney here?
Well, this would probably be a civil case. Okay. So in a civil case, you have the plaintiff and the defendant.
Okay. So if you are the it's the approach to the question where you're trying to discredit, right, who is in the witness box.
Okay, then you would probably be a defense attorney in that scenario, and I'd be the plaintiff saying, hey, this is what happened to me, and you're trying to disprove me. So you'd be a defense lawyer, probably.
I'm gonna be the defense attorney.
All right.
Right.
Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, somebody's got to do it. And so with something like this coming from somebody in the witness box, it seems like that would be a pretty easy target, right? To go at somebody.
Yeah.
And so my next question would be, do you think you were abducted? Why? By something not of this earth? What makes you take that leap that this is something extraterrestrial?
I'm not taking that leap. Now, back 21-year-old Chris might have taken that leap, but older and wiser. It's similar to Roswell. It's a fact that my roommate and I were seen leaving a bar at 9 o'clock. It is a fact that we were seen coming home at 4 o'clock, and it is a fact that neither of us remember. Now, beyond that, there is no evidence. I can lay in bed or sit around the fire like anybody else and, shoot some theories, but to put forth a theory on what happened to me, I don't know, other than the facts that I just gave you.
We all did that when we were 21. I did that so many times, I don't even know if I could count them.
Right. Well, okay. So let me play it this way. And now I'm going to be the plaintiff attorney. So I'm the guy supporting me, right?
Right.
So, Mr. Johnston, when this happened to you, you were 21 years old. Is that correct? Yep, that's correct. Had you ever had any alcohol to drink before that night? Oh, yeah. Did you like to go out and party? Oh, yeah. And I would set up how much experience this young man has partying and boozing. And then I would get to that they had one drink, and then I would call in corroborating witnesses. Now, they couldn't attest to the time, but they could say, yeah, I saw him at the bar, and he had one beer. So that's how you would work on, undercutting where you want, or you were going with it.
Yeah, you're right about that. Now with Roswell, which is so unique in that I don't think anything has been researched as much as the Roswell case has. A lot of cases have had a lot of research put into it, but especially early on in the 90s, I read every book on Roswell. I read so many books on Roswell that I thought that I had read them twice. Only because the information started to repeat. I read it all just like you have.
Right.
And the amount of evidence and witnesses that is there for the Roswell incident, that's a big pile of stuff. Now, would you call it direct evidence? Would you call it something else? And there's three parts of this. And not everybody could have been drinking all night long.
Right. So when you say there's a lot of evidence, I get people coming to my door all the time. Oh, counselor, I got this case and I got all this evidence. Okay, well, show me. Right. That's one of the problems with Roswell. One, given the government involvement, and two, the decades and decades since it's happened, I'm not aware of any actual physical evidence, right? Everything is hearsay. And that was one of the challenges with the book. It is very accurate trial procedure. However, there are instances where the attorneys in the book get away with hearsay, that you otherwise wouldn't, because I'm trying to, tell a narrative at the same time. But as far as evidence goes, so let's just pretend that everybody was still alive, right? All the players, your Mac Brezels and your Jesse Marcels. So even at that, yeah, you'd have a much better case, but we're still lacking any physical evidence. There's a lot of descriptions from both sides. Oh, yeah, it was covered with, the hieroglyphs, or then General Ramey. No, it wasn't, right? But actual evidence to be admitted into evidence, that is really lacking.
Okay. Now, it sounds like you're going to be the defense attorney tonight, because I'm going to be the plaintiff. My first piece of evidence, and I've got a lot.
Okay.
But the first piece of evidence that I bring forth, and people's exhibit number one, right? Would be the press release from Hout. I think the press release from Hout would have to have, and I would say this to the court right now, this press release was written, rewritten, and approved at the highest levels of Roswell Army Airfield for release, and it is accurate and precise. And so that would be my first piece of evidence I would like to admit into court.
Okay, and that was, you mentioned that was written by Hout, correct?
Charles Hout.
Yes, right. And Charles Hout is the same gentleman that executed an affidavit in 1993. So, and Jimmy, I'm really getting on the lawyer high horse here, so I apologize.
It's your job.
So Mr. Hout, he executed an affidavit in 1993 regarding the Roswell incident, okay? And then we get the affidavit admitted. Walter Hout then executed another affidavit in 2002. Okay, so we're 9 years later, and we all know memories don't get better, right? They get weaker. Yet suddenly in 2002, Hout's making noise about bodies. So if I'm coming at this from the defense perspective, his credibility just, I would hang him up on those two affidavits. How can you be trusted, way back over here, right? When we have evidence of your changing affidavits. Okay, so that would be approach number one. Approach number two, you got, and there's some of this in the book, I would play up his rank a little bit. Okay, well, we got General Ramey, right? And he's a general, and we all kind of know the hierarchy of the military. And Ramey says, and Ramey was smart about it, Jimmy. He just owned it. He said, yep, that is what the press release said, and it was a mistake. So he did a good job of trying to put that to bed. So I'd play Ramey against an excited Hout and a bunch of excited guys not knowing what they're talking about, and then even go to show some fallibility or issues with his memory or his reasons for the story as it is. But so I would somewhat deflect away from, okay, well, let's go back to 47 when the press release was done. But
that's the accurate. That's when all the memories were solid. But the approvals and the rewrites going into that press release from the most secure, secret, intelligent installation on planet Earth at that time was Roswell Army Airfield. And the only nuclear bomb wing that we had, the world's best kept secrets were all right there. And their intelligence network and how they dealt with stuff was handled by the best of the best of the best that we had in the military and the world of science at that time. So the writing of that memo would have to have been accurate. They wouldn't have released it unless it was. But the next part with that, extending off of the memo at that time, was General Ramey taking photographs in Dallas of the debris. Forensic analysis of the photographs that were taken of him at that time. He's holding a memo in his hand, and that CSI investigation revealed that it was indeed a saucer and a craft, and that's what was retrieved. And he was holding the memo in his hand. So I would like to also bring into evidence people's evidence number two is the Ramey memo that he held in front of the press in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. So it's my understanding, Mr. Church, that was actually an FBI telex. Am I correct on that, or am I wrong on that?
That part has never been officially released by either the FBI or the Department of Defense. We just know that the memo is in his hand and has since been analyzed.
Sure.
And thank goodness that we had high-res film negatives that were taken that clearly show what was typed on that memo.
Right. And this is where I get it, why people get frustrated about lawyers in the court process. The reason I going to drill down on was that telex and FBI issues. I addressed this in the book, and I kind of set up some issues with objections, again, sort of an educational bent on it, because General Ramey, he couldn't testify to that memo. He could testify if he wanted to, but it would be very easy for General Ramey to say, I don't know what it said. So then he doesn't have foundation to even talk any further about it if it was generated by the FBI. So because he doesn't have the foundation to say who made it, who wrote it, who gave it to whom, the chain of custody.
Well, if Ramey was in the witness box, I would merely say it would be obvious. Man, I sound like an attorney. I play one on TV. I don't mess around with this stuff. I would literally go straight at Ramey. What, you don't read the memos that are sent to you then? You're holding it in your hand and you didn't read it?
Mr. Church, I'm a general in the Army. I get thousands of memos a day. I'm sorry I can't answer your question, but I specifically can't speak to that one.
Well, who gave you this memo? And why are you holding it in your hand?
And like I said, I'm given memos, documents all day, every day in my job. So I couldn't even tell you honestly, Mr. Church, who gave me that telex or what it says. But
it was important enough for you to be holding it in front of the press.
Oh, I can see how it looked like that, but I hold on to things, I'm handed something, a picture's taken. It doesn't mean it was important to me. It just means a picture was taken when I had it in my hand.
So anybody can just hand you anything?
Well, within reason, if it's a harmless piece of paper, sure.
I arrest my case. I'm done with this witness. See, that's what I'm saying about this. There's so much there.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much there. Okay, so General Ramey.
Yes, sir.
You should know the difference between a weather balloon and a Boeing Super Fortress bomber, don't you?
I do.
You do. Why would you fly Mylar foiled weather balloon material to Wright-Patterson for analysis when you already know it's a weather balloon?
Your Honor, could we take a break? That's a great question, Jimmy. It absolutely is. And I haven't researched that angle nor prepared my mock trial on that angle. So, but that's a good point, and again, that gets into the level of research that could be done. What I came to the realization, the longest case I've ever tried was about 3 weeks. This case, if Roswell really was going to trial, this would be one of those 4, 5, 6 month, in the news every day with the Roswell updates, because as we've established, as there's so much there, and for purposes of the book, certain things that I did leave out, and that was one, and that's an excellent question.
Well, it's staying on this kind of zone, if we will, when we take an honest look at what Roswell Army Airfield represented at that time, to even be a personnel or service member on that base, you are right, and you have a security claim at every level. So when you look at somebody like Jesse Marcel, who is one of the intelligence officers of the base, who, and any 8-year-old boy in the United States at that time knew all of his airplanes.
Sure.
Knew all the German airplanes, knew all the British airplanes, knew all the, we know what is going on, missiles and things, and technology. And coming off of World War II, this is just 2 years after that, where secrecy is still paramount, and all of that, right? Loose lips sink ships, and all of those things. So you would have to take for granted that Jesse Marcel knew what he was looking at, if it was a weather balloon or if it was anything terrestrial or whatever. And he's walking through that debris field, and he didn't see a weather balloon, did he? No,
he did not. And nobody did. And nobody saw a weather balloon until, what was it, about 2 days later? Then that's suddenly when it is, Project Mogul or what have you. But and that is in my book, how I addressed, kind of closing up the cross-exam of General Ramey is simply, as I said, he did all he could do is by owning it, right? But then you are also asking us to believe that mistake can be made at that military base.
It seems impossible. Anything is possible. Yeah, anything is possible. I understand that part. But that seems impossible.
Well, we need to put together this trial and get some jurors.
Oh yeah. Well, we've got the chat room tonight. That is our jury. And so if I was going to poll the jury right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's poll. How do you guys think the trial is going so far? Did you ever see, I know you have, My Cousin Vinny?
Oh yeah.
Best is that you have a few good men, right? You've got all kinds of great trial, dramas that have been, but is My Cousin Vinny the best courtroom film ever made?
It is. And many of us would say that. And I watched that movie in law school in my evidence class, and Chief Justice Toussaint, who is the Chief Justice of the Minnesota Court of Appeals, was the instructor. And we didn't watch the whole movie, but what we watched was Joe Pesci laying expert foundation for Marissa Tomei, and how many cars have you fixed? And how many, that whole bit, the actual laying the foundation was perfect. And it's I do it all the time now, that laying that expert foundation or crossing expert foundation, same thing. But yeah, My Cousin Vinny, they did an outstanding job.
I got to say, Fred, when he leans in and he goes, did you say Utes? Best. I mean, okay. Anyway, let's not go sideways there. I have a couple of friends, and one specifically comes to mind. He's no longer with us, but literally could quote the script.
Wow.
I mean, word for word from beginning to end. And I thought I had it down, right? No, and people just love that. It's just a perfect movie. It's a perfect movie.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, so good, so strong. Okay, so back to this. The how many soldiers does it take? You're in the witness box. Okay. Let's make you Ramey.
Okay, I'm Ramey again.
How many airmen and security people does it take to collect the debris of a weather balloon? It seems that they must crash all the time and are never recovered. Why would you need to do it in this case?
Well, we recover them when we can recover them, and this one was certainly recoverable. So that's why we chose to get it. It was very close, as you know, geographically to the base. So why wouldn't we go out and recover our materials?
Why would you change your story? Which story is true? We have 4 different versions presented from the Department of Defense. And we have the original Walter Haut press release. We have the General Ramey turnaround 2 days later of weather balloon. Then we have Project Mogul and sensitive Soviet listening devices. And then we have crash test dummies that were being thrown out of airplanes. 4 different versions have been presented, and we would have to ask the obvious question: is the Department of Defense ever telling the truth?
Well, Mr. Church, I certainly can't speak for the entire Department of Defense. I can tell you that I'm telling the truth, and I'm the one that's here to testify.
So which version is the truth?
As I've stated, it was a weather balloon.
Right. And I only laugh because you can't expect the American public to believe such a story.
Is there a question there, counselor?
No, there is. Can you expect the entirety of the United States to believe that?
Well, that's not really my job, counselor. My job is simply to be a general in the Army and do the best I can and tell the truth. Now, if people choose to believe that or not believe it, there's nothing I can do about that.
Were you at the debris field?
No, I personally was not at the debris field.
How do you know that what you are presenting to the press is what came from the debris field if you were not there?
Well, we do have standard operating procedures in the military, and we do track all of the flights. So if I'm told the material is being put on flight ABC 123 and landing in Fort Worth at 11:22, we can track it the entire way. The flip to your question is then you would be implying that the rest of my troops are doing things and sending materials elsewhere without my knowledge, and that's not the case.
Well, they wrote a press release that was inaccurate. So somebody wasn't telling the truth there. So anything could happen in the chain of command.
Well, as you said, they wrote a press release that wasn't accurate, and fortuitously, I was able to correct that.
Who do you trust as to give you accurate information in this case? We are talking about extraterrestrials here. And how do you know that you are the last stop on this and that there isn't somebody else that is handling this situation?
Well, first, I hate to correct you, but I'm not talking about extraterrestrials. You're talking about extraterrestrials.
You did the press release that said flying saucer.
But I did not say extraterrestrials.
Are you suggesting that if it was a flying saucer, it came of this earth? From Russia? From the Germans?
No, Mr. Church, I'm not suggesting any of that. I'm just suggesting that it was simply a weather balloon.
Is the Department of Defense building flying saucers?
Not to my knowledge.
Is it possible that they could be building them and testing them without your knowledge?
Anything's possible.
I should get a bar card, huh?
You should.
I should get a bar card. I could probably, without even going to law school. Is it hard? Is that test hard? Or is it logic? Is it, can you pass it without having brains, but being very logical?
I don't think so. Yeah, there's too much. So it's a 2-day test. There's the essay portion and the multi-state, and there's a bunch of stuff going on. I mean, in no disrespect, if I gave you a packet of information and said, okay, Jimmy, in there are 3 different legal issues that you have to write about, ad nauseum.
Right.
Unless, right. Because you're not going to be looking for, they don't have standing to do this, or there's collateral estoppel. And there's so much minutia. So that's where you'd struggle. But, the 200 question, the multi-choice, maybe. Even for us, I'll tell you, I studied harder for the bar than anything I've done in my life. And even those guys like me who studying 8, 10, 12 hours a day for that last month, the multiple choice questions, it's one of those deals where you'd get it down to 2 in a split second. And then either, very laboring thought processes on, is it A or B? Is it A or B? But I think somebody with a good amount of logic and, a fair amount of smarts could do okay on the bar, sure.
Back to the trial.
Okay.
Back to the trial. After the initial press release, General Ramey, before you issued an alternative view to the press, the entirety of media and newspaper reporting and journalists was covering this story immediately because of the worldwide interest in the story. Every newspaper in the United States had journalists on their way to Roswell. But then you issued another statement to suggest that this was a weather balloon. And all of those journalists stopped their travel and went back home because it was now over. Was that a deliberate cover-up on your part?
Not at all. And I do need to correct one of your word choice. I didn't suggest it was a weather balloon. I said it was a weather balloon. So to that end, since it was a weather balloon, I had no need to try to deter people from coming out to Roswell or anything else. Again, people are going to do what they're going to do. And you did what you had to do too in switching the debris at the last moment. And when Jesse Marcel came into your office, he was not looking at the debris that he had collected. And he was instructed by you to pose with this weather balloon when he knew that wasn't the debris that he collected. Is that
just another case of you doing what you had to do for the cover-up?
No, and I am aware of Jesse Marcel's testimony and what he said over the years, and it's simply not the way that I remember it, Mr. Church.
He was at the debris field, and he was also with you in the office. So he saw different debris than what he collected at the airfield. So he was the one that was at both places and not you. So isn't it Jesse Marcel whose credibility is on solid ground?
Well, I'm not questioning, Mr. Marcel and his credibility, Mr. Church. I am again testifying as General Ramey, and I can only testify to what I know and what I know the facts to be. So if you want to, deal with, Major Marcel and see what we think about his credibility, that's up to you, but it's inappropriate to do it through me.
No, actually, you're the one that was making the decisions on this. So I'm going to keep the questioning going right here. When the Air Force then changed its story again for the fourth time and suggested crash test dummies, that program didn't start until 3 years after the Roswell event. If you are going to manufacture a story, shouldn't you get your dates correct? And why make such a mistake that was so easily caught?
You would certainly think so. And let's go back to you and me for a minute, Jimmy, because I do have a question about that. Do you know the first year that the crash test dummy story was floated? No pun intended. I don't. So I'm actually honestly asking you.
Okay, it surfaced, officially surfaced in the Air Force's investigation and release of their report in 1996. It was called Roswell Case Closed. Mm-hmm. And now there were 2 reports that were done around that same time. The General Accounting Office, the GAO, also released their report, which was also very extensive, and that was in 1997. And so when we back up, the senator from New Mexico at that time asked for the Air Force to look into this. Okay. And the Air Force did. They came out with case closed. Their determination in their official report that was submitted in Capitol Hill stated that everybody was wrong, that it was actually crash test dummies that were thrown out of airplanes that people thought were alien bodies. Well, that was the Air Force official report. And then, as it turns out, that specific program didn't start until 1953.
Okay. So I had certainly heard the story, and I knew that the program post-dated Roswell, but I didn't know when that first popped up. And this isn't me trying to be cute, but I'm running into such new evidence relative to, the book, that I didn't get, certain factoids like that in there. And I kind of,
but so back to my point, there is so much there.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent decades looking into the Roswell story, and so have many others. I'm certainly not the last word on this case, but the more that and somebody like Don Schmidt is really into every aspect of this. But when you acquire a bunch of knowledge and then you hear something that doesn't quite fit,
sure,
you're able to just go, well, wait a minute here. It's not like so you have the dates, right? July 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, right? That 1 week period.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things happened during before, after, and during that period. You had Kenneth Arnold with his sighting up in Washington, which coined the term flying saucers, of course. You had the Rhodes photographs that were taken in Phoenix right before Roswell. Those photographs are some of the best UFO photographs ever taken, period. Amazing. And then Roswell happened. And so we're all fixated on those dates, 1947. But it's not the same thing with the Air Force. So if they're going to go and compile, they are not ufologists.
Right.
Right? They don't have these dates fixated in their heads like we do. And so when you go and you make a claim like that, obviously they didn't go and check those dates, or it wouldn't have been in that report. There's no
Right.
way you could say case closed if the dates aren't right.
Right.
They thought it would be, it's just going to go and that's it. It's over. Actually, they made it worse for me. It's like,
Right.
here's another lie.
Right. But what do they say when you're in a hole, stop digging? Right.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
100%. 100%. Quit while you're ahead. Right.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, okay, so let's go back. What about the claims? You're still General Ramey.
Okay.
And I think Ramey should be on the stand probably more than anybody else, because the buck stops there. Right? He put himself in that position. He went on, right, to run everything for the Air Force at the Pentagon. And so he was already on a trajectory during all of this, right?
Sure.
And he was the things that he did for the way that the Department of Defense was overall shaped and over the next 20 years, that was all on Ramey's shoulders. He was a tough guy, man, for sure. But going back to Roswell, many witnesses have stated that they were involved and saw autopsies at the Roswell Army Hospital, and that small caskets, sealed caskets, were ordered to transport these bodies out. Again, reportedly to Wright-Patterson. Were there alien bodies inside of that weather balloon when it crashed?
Oh, and Jimmy, I got so intrigued back on a different witness. I'm General Ramey, right?
Yes.
I totally forgot that. I was getting all excited about a different angle. So,
oh, okay. Who do you want to be?
Well, are you familiar with?
You want to be Glenn Dennis?
Well, yeah. When you started talking about bodies and caskets, that's where I thought you were going to go. What was with Glenn Dennis, and he's another one. You talk about, the Air Force kind of making things worse. He's another one where his reference to, sure, he said he got the call, that got the caskets ordered, right? It wasn't until significantly later, oh yeah, I saw the bodies, right? And so it's that. So why do folks do that? The hyperbole, and in my book, there's an instance that in the very back, I have kind of a juror deliberation guide. Everybody's witness, all the witnesses are listed alphabetically, and kind of the pros and the cons on him. And I like Glenn Dennis for the believers, but doggone, his story changes and now includes having seen, the bodies. And then we hear about the nurse that he talked to, but of course, nobody knew the nurse's name, and she was there for a day and split back to Minnesota or, something like that.
I think she was moved to Europe and stationed in Europe or something like that, London, and was never heard from again.
Right. So, he's another extremely, and the witnesses that really made the cut for my book are the ones that really could go either way, right? I did that by design, as far as, I wanted the witnesses that could kind of go either way to help with the thought process here. But Glenn Dennis, one of my favorites, but why the change, right?
How did he change?
Well, when he first talked about having caskets being ordered, he never said he saw a body. He said he took the caskets out there and kind of that was that. Then when he retold the story, oh yeah, well, I saw some bodies, and he got pushed on it, kind of like Melvin Brown, the military policeman, kind of that same thing when pushed on it. Well, it was more, I kind of saw this tent over there, and in the tent saw what looked like could have been bodies. And so that's where Glenn Dennis went with it. It would have been much stronger testimony had, that never happened. Had it just been simply, I got this call for these tiny little caskets, which had never happened before.
Do you think that happens over time? Originally, Glenn Dennis said, now this is how the story has changed. Okay. Sure. But so I'll give the last version of it. But originally, when you look at the original books that were written and the original interviews with Glenn, right around 1990, in that period, 90, 91, 92, 93, a bunch of books were written. And he had stated that the airbase calls him up, somebody from the airbase orders a bunch of child-sized caskets, which he didn't have in stock at the time, and they wanted something that was sealable, right? But he could get them in a couple of days. And they said, okay, so he orders them, they come in, he goes out to the base, and he gets in, but he said it was heavy security around the hospital, but that's where he met the nurse. And so he talked to her inside of the hospital, and then he had said at that time, again, I'm paraphrasing here, but he saw what looked to him to be an autopsy or something going on through the glass in this room. And the nurse said, you're not supposed to be here. You cannot see what's going on right now. She started to tell him some other things. And that's when the red-headed officer comes up, right? The famous red-headed guy, and separates the two of them and sends him on his way. He never saw her again. Now, the other part of the story is that the updated version is he never delivered the caskets. He never did. He ordered them, could not get them. They ordered them, he could not get them, but he did go out to the base. So it's kind of weird. Did that happen or not? The other part of the second part of the story is originally he said he saw something going on inside of the hospital. Later on, he said it was outside of the hospital. So which way, where do we go with this?
Right. And it's very difficult to believe, right, that something, put it this way, if I saw alien bodies, I'm leading with that, right? And every conversation I have, and I'm going to remember exactly where I was and exactly who was there, because I couldn't imagine anything much more impactful than that. So yeah, so changing testimony when something is so significant is a big red flag to me.
Now, okay, so now I'm going to flip you back to your Ramey. Okay.
Right.
How many crash sites were there, General Ramey?
Well, Mr. Church, I think we're here dealing with the crash at the Brazel property. Is that correct? Well, not the Brazel, but the ranch that Mr. Brazel was the caretaker for.
We are talking about that, but the question is, how many crash sites were there?
Can you be more specific?
Yeah, that would be, is there more than one?
More than one crash site, but where? And not trying to be cute, Jimmy. Is it serious? I'm trying to drill down the question because we'd have problems with this. More than one crash site, but what in New Mexico or Chavez County, or So I'm trying to help you out, but I need a little more specificity.
It's an easy question to answer, General Ramey. Was there one crash site, 2, or 10?
Well, we are here for Roswell, the truth on trial, dealing with the crash that was discovered by Mr. Brazel. So with that understanding, there was one.
Okay. What about reports that was not the crash site, that was an impact site, and then the craft itself was recovered 30 miles away in the town of Corona?
Well, I'm not aware of that. I'm aware of the one crash site.
Then how can we trust your testimony, General Ramey, if you're not completely familiar with the entire cover-up, which would suggest the cover-up is above you? Is this cover-up that started in Roswell, is this the method of operation for everything now that the Air Force needs to cover up when it comes to the subject of UFOs?
Well, first, I object to the form of the question with the use of the term.
Of course, you would object.
Cover up.
It's the most important aspect of this case. Was it your blueprint As head of the Air Force, the future Air Force, was it your blueprint for all future cover-ups?
Not at all. I don't deal in cover-ups, Mr. Church. This was a simply isolated incident of a weather balloon crashing, and we handled it with standard operating procedure. Once the initial excitement wore off from some of the lower troops.
Why? Well, then, if it's not a cover-up, why would you transport a weather balloon to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the Foreign Technology Center?
Where would you have me transfer it? I'm not going to keep it in my office in Fort Worth.
You would transport it to a garbage bin, I would think.
Well, a lot of those materials are recyclable and whatnot, can be used in other projects. So if we have recovered materials, we have to send it to some centralized repository, and Wright-Pat seems as good as the next.
Well, you stated that it was balsa wood and foil. What is
Correct.
so important about balsa wood and foil, sir?
Well, again, nothing necessarily inherent important about those items, but as part of a U.S. project, we have the materials. We send them off to do what they do with them once they get them on their end.
One of the bodies was reportedly still alive. Two had been recovered deceased. Where did you take the living body, and did anybody interrogate the living pilot?
Oh, Mr. Church, I wish that there had been bodies, in particular if one of them was living, but that didn't exist, so there was nothing to take anywhere in that vein.
Does the Air Force, does the Department of Defense, then the Army Air Force, do they have procedures in place where to take bodies that have been recovered from crashes?
That may exist, but since, well, in particular to, it sounds like you're talking about extraterrestrial bodies, given that, since it's never happened, I don't know, and I've never asked.
What would you do if it was a human pilot? What would you do with that body?
Well, objection, hypothetical, but let's say that there were a human body who was deceased. Well, that person would be sent to, I'm not sure where, the New Mexico hospitals. We'd send them to the Presidio in San Francisco, or we always send, deceased aviators, or, whatever, Jimmy, they would normally do. I don't know.
Is that where you sent these deceased aviators?
Again, as I said, I'm not aware of any aviators deceased or otherwise. So I didn't send anybody anywhere.
What information did you guys get from communicating with this alien? Did you guys make any deals?
Again, I wish something like that could have happened. There were no aliens, Mr. Church.
After 1947, it seems that technology in the United States took huge leaps forward. Certainly central in that were printed circuit boards and the invention of the transistor, all after July of 1947. Were these technologies from the crashed craft in Roswell?
No, not at all. It was just coincidental in that regard, but you'll recall we're on the heels of World War II, and the amount of technological advances that we were able to make both in industrial and technology during the war and because of the war had us already positioned to be able to release products like you're referencing, and it just so happened to coincide with this Roswell that you're talking about.
Well, this crashed craft, not of this earth, was very significant in human history, and a lot of turning points happened at that time. Not only with how the Department of Defense was structured, the creation of the Air Force now as a new branch of the military, also the creation of the Central Intelligence Agency and the CIA after the OAS. All of this, in addition to the technology, was all just a coincidence?
Yes. And again, you're talking about restructuring of the military. Again, we had just, completed the Second World War. So the time was ripe to be able to look at, the good, the bad, the ugly, what we were doing as far as a military, and make changes accordingly. So again, all those things did happen at Roswell, but my kids were born after Roswell, and I'm pretty sure that didn't have anything to do with that.
No, but they weren't born in July of 1947 like the transistor and and the creation of the Central Intelligence Agency. These are very significant changes in our country, all timed around the crash of a flying saucer outside of the city of Roswell in New Mexico. And I would suggest that it is beyond coincidence, isn't it?
Well, that argument you can certainly make that argument, Mr. Church, and the jurors will do what jurors do with it.
Why cover up something that is nature? This is just the universe and it's just life out there. Why keep this from the public, and why continue to lie about it?
Well, again, and maybe we could get a standing objection anytime reference to aliens. I have never said that there were aliens there. So there's
sustained.
Thank you. So there is nothing for me to be lying about. It just simply didn't exist, Mr. Church.
But you just stated, I can go back and read from the court reporter, you just stated that you have lied about this repeatedly, and it was just what you had to do.
No, and nice attempt at taking two different subtexts together. I did what I had to do, which was correct the record and indicate what this actually was, which was a weather balloon. That is what I had to do. I needed the record to be correct, so I corrected it.
But the Air Force has done this repeatedly over the years, including its official Project Blue Book, which were taking the facts of different sightings and reports and twisting them for the public. And we don't know the reasons why, like the creation of swamp gas, when swamp gas had nothing to do with those sightings, but that was the Air Force, again, I would use the word lie, and making up facts and presenting those to the public. Well, I mean, why keep the truth from the public in this with alien contact?
Well, Mr. Church, I'm only testifying as myself, General Ramey. I have not kept anything from the public. I have said it's a weather balloon. I've said it's a weather balloon since day one. So I think you might have the wrong guy on the stand if that's the arguments that you want to make.
Yeah. So that's a really good point. That the public, when it comes to weather balloons now that is comedy. That is now humor. Right now, I'm talking to Chris Johnston, attorney. Okay. Right. That you know what I mean? Now it is taken on its own pop culture term and definition.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. And this whole exercise in writing my book. I mean, at my core, I am a believer, and I want to believe. However, trying to capture true courtroom procedure and drama leaves so much out, as you and I were talking about. So it's frustrating from my standpoint.
Yeah. And when we come back after the break, I want to turn the tables. I want to be in the witness box, and I want you to put on your JD hat and come at me.
Okay.
This is a lot of fun. And here's the situation, and yeah, I'm coming at you hard, but the reason for that is very simple. The Air Force has always been in a very uncomfortable position with this, and they've never been able to, satisfaction, present the reasons why for any of this for so many years. And is it because, and then we'll take our break.
Sure.
Do you think that the Air Force, not the Department of Defense, because we've got different branches of the military that have all handled the UFO question a little bit differently, but the Air Force, not only because of Project Blue Book, but the Air Force has always had a very cocky, self-assured stance on this because they've never had to tell the truth. So why should they start telling the truth now? They've always been able to hold all of the cards. Is that a position that you would expect to change in the future, or is the Air Force always going to have this position, which is we don't care what the questions are?
So it sounds like kind of on point for disclosure, right? Is essentially what that question was about. I believe disclosure is not going to come from the government. Something is going to happen extraterrestrial wise on Earth that cannot be denied, cannot be lied about, no obfuscation, right? It's simply, hey, Jimmy Church saw it, Chris Johnston saw it, Sally Jones. And at that point, we don't need the government to even confirm our beliefs or whatever. That's how I think disclosure is actually going to occur. Now, obviously, I have no evidence, but I think the extraterrestrials seem to move faster than the U.S. government, right? So,
yeah, and that's a really bizarre position. Not your position, not your statement, but that I believe that is the way the Air Force kind of looks at this. But and how so many of us that have seen something will have that position, because I kind of had that position for a number of years. I don't need disclosure from the government, but I'll just say this. I'm going to use a bad word. That's a bullshit position. And let me tell you why. So many out there, witnesses of people that have had their experiences, husbands and wives and sons and daughters and everything, where they have been teased and ridiculed and called names, and to the point where they don't want to tinfoil hats, and they don't want to even talk about the subject. The only thing that will allow them to hold their head high is the frigging Oval Office to go live on TV. And that's the only thing that's good enough for them. And I get that. I totally understand that now, where I didn't understand that in the past. Anything else is just the hearsay that you're talking about. It's just more Luis Elizondo, blah, 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 coming out. That you're in a circle argument that goes nowhere. You need to have the last word. You do. You've got to have it. Okay, so today I'm here to announce that we are not alone in the universe. Right? That's what they need. So they can turn around, slap their husband upside the head, right, and go, see?
I agree with you 100%. But I honestly think it is more likely that there is going to be something that can't be denied before a government comes out.
Oh, they're praying for that. They're praying for that, Chris. They want that.
Right.
They
We're
want
off
that
the hook,
so bad.
right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh man. James Webb. They want Independence Day over Los Angeles. Because you're right. Yeah, we're off the hook. I like that.
Yeah.
Whew!
Right.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, I'm going to get grilled on the witness stand. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Chris Johnston. JD, tonight, it's Roswell, the truth on trial. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. Today we're headed to Bolivia, Tiahuanaco, Peru, and of course, Pumapunku. Brian, exciting. Thank you so much for everything, my friend.
Always an honor. Right behind us is the sacred river of the Inca that goes past Machu Picchu. So we're going to be driving up to its source at 15,000 feet above sea level and then down to Lake Titicaca.
So today we hit 15,000 feet.
Yes.
Crazy. And you can do it with us. All you have to do is go to hiddenincatours.com. Simple. We've got 2 tours coming up next year, one in June for the summer solstice, right? And then another one right here in November. So hiddenincatours.com. Come and hang out with Brian and I and his amazing team.
Right on.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Roswell, The Truth on Trial. That's right. That's the new book. And our guest tonight is Christopher Johnston, JD. He is a trial attorney. And we are in court, as you can see. We're in court. And let's continue with the trial. I'm just going to say it. A hostile witness? Oh, I'm going to be very hostile, Your Honor.
Tell you what, how about you be Jesse Marcel?
Okay.
All right. And I'm going to be the skeptic's attorney, and I'm going to cross you.
Okay. Let's go.
And so just a tiny bit so I'm going to look old here or lawyerly, I'm not sure. But
lawyerly.
Right.
My cousin Vinny, we're going to just do that all night, right?
That's right. Very lawyerly of me. So anyway, for your listeners, when you call your own witness, then you ask questions. You can't ask leading questions of your own witnesses, but on cross, which what we're about to do with you, because you were called initially as a believer's witness. I am the skeptic attorney, so I'm going to cross-examine you so I can kind of almost do whatever I want to.
Okay.
And I also, since I did all the hard work of Jesse Marcel's testimony already being in my book, I'm going to cross you in part mainly with questions from the book. Okay.
Let's go.
Is that all right? Okay. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Marcel.
Good morning.
Okay. Say, as you know, you just testified, for the other attorney, and I was very impressed. You were able to, you listened to all the questions and you answered all of them. You did a great job.
I did.
And I would ask, for the same respect, when I ask you questions, to wait until I'm done asking and to answer them the very best of your ability that you can. Fair?
Fair.
Okay. Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier that you served as the intelligence officer at Roswell Airfield in 1947. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And part of your duties involved analyzing and identifying foreign or domestic military technologies, correct?
Yes.
And at that time, you were familiar with common materials used in military operations, true?
Yes.
And you were also aware of what aluminum, foil, rubber, and balsa wood was. You know what those things are, true?
Anyone should.
Did you?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, you testified earlier that the debris that you found included some lightweight foil and beams. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And some of these materials you said were pliable and could return to their original shape and were unusually durable. True?
Yes.
And Mr. Marcel, isn't it true that materials like aluminum foil, rubberized cloth, and balsa wood exhibit some of the properties that you just described?
Yes.
So, as an intelligence officer, you are expected to recognize all sorts of things, including weather balloons, true?
Yes.
And you'd seen weather balloons prior to this night, true?
Many times.
Yeah. And despite your experience, you initially reported that the debris might have come from a flying disc or some other identified craft. Is that correct?
It didn't come from a weather balloon.
Yeah. But again, you said that it may have come from a flying disc or some other identified craft. Is that correct?
As my job as an intelligence officer, I'm collecting information and debris and will analyze it later, but it did not come from a weather balloon.
Okay. And that's all very interesting, but you still didn't answer my question. Did you say the debris might have come from a flying disc or some other identified craft? Yes or no?
I may have said that, yes.
Thank you. Okay. But then just, shortly after this press release came out, your superiors publicly stated that the debris was a weather balloon, correct?
They changed their story, yes.
And said it was a weather balloon, true?
They changed their story. Those weren't my words.
Yeah. Were you involved in drafting the revised explanation?
No.
Yeah. Why were you excluded from that?
I was surprised by everything when I showed up in Dallas.
Okay, so do you know why you were excluded from drafting the second release that said it was a weather balloon?
I would assume because I was the initial witness and I knew the truth.
Okay, you did anyone ever tell you that?
No, I was completely blindsided in Dallas, and you can see it in my face in the photographs that were taken.
Okay, well, we'll get to that. Could it be that you weren't involved in the drafting of the press release because your superiors didn't trust you?
Well, my original statements about it possibly being a flying saucer or of something not of this earth was because I knew that everything that I was looking at wasn't anything that I was familiar with already, being a career officer in the Air Force. It didn't make any sense. So I assumed that it came from somewhere else. It certainly wasn't a manufacturer of anything that the Air Force was using at the time.
Sure. And you keep going back to that, Mr. Marcel, but that actually wasn't the question on the table in front of you. Since you were never given a reason as to why you were excluded from drafting the revised press release, then the reason could be anything. True?
No. I will answer your question again. They knew that I would not support their version of the story.
Let me try it this way, Mr. Marcel. Were you ever told, this is a yes or no question, were you ever told why you were excluded from drafting the revised press release?
No.
Okay. So since you weren't told, you were only left to assume as to why you were excluded from that. True?
Ask the question another way.
Sure. Since no one ever told you why you were excluded from helping with the revised statement, that means you don't know why you were excluded. You're only assuming why you were excluded. True?
The question is hypothetical.
No, it's not a hypothetical. If
I don't know the reason, then it's a hypothetical answer.
No, if you don't know the reason, then it becomes true that anything could be the reason. You simply don't know. You don't, if someone were to say A, B, or C, since you were never told, you couldn't say that that person was any more right or wrong than you, correct?
Anything is possible.
Thank you. You said that some of the material that you found included some strange symbols resembling hieroglyphics. Is that right?
Yes.
And you testified that these symbols didn't match any language or markings that you had seen before. Is that true?
Anything that I was taught in school, reading and writing, didn't match anything that I was taught. I can read and write, and I could not read those symbols.
Isn't it true that some children's toys in the 40s, even now for that matter, included symbols or decorations that could be mistaken for hieroglyphs?
I don't know.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Did you take any photographs of the debris at the crash site before you removed it?
Yes.
And where are those photographs now, Mr. Marcel?
I turned those in to Roswell Army Airfield along with everything that we collected.
Okay. And after you gathered the debris, you transported it to initially to the Roswell Army Airfield. Is that correct?
On multiple flatbed trucks, pickup trucks, and we had 200 to 400 service personnel collecting that debris.
Well, that's great, but that wasn't my question. When you first collected it from the debris field, did you take it to the Roswell Army Airfield? Is that where it initially went?
I am saying that I didn't personally collect all of the debris. We had 200 to 400 personnel that were collecting it on multiple trucks and pickup trucks. It was a multiple day collection that was 24 hours a day. So I wasn't the only one collecting the debris.
Did you take any debris that you collected to the Roswell Army Airfield?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marcel, were there specific protocols in place for handling potentially sensitive or classified materials?
Yes.
And are those, is that protocol? Is it an order? How do those work?
It depends on the situation. If it is a crashed craft from the military, we handle it a certain way. If it is a crashed craft that is from an adversary, that is certainly handled another way and transported to other locations around the United States and analyzed. If it is a civilian aircraft, then that is collected a different way, and different agencies are involved, just like this case with the Department of Defense.
Okay. And so let's say, can we agree that it would be a protocol on how to handle any of these? And it's really just semantics, Mr. Marcel. Would a protocol on how to handle a body be the appropriate word to use? Or would it be an order? You're ordered how to deal with it.
We are talking about an area of high sensitivity and classification, and I can't comment publicly on that.
Okay. So whether it's a procedure, a protocol, an order, when there is instruction on how to deal with anything in the military, but let's use a crashed craft here, is it important to follow those protocols, orders, again, whatever it is we're going to call them? Is it important?
In the military, we have not only classifications, but we have rank. And I am just somebody that is taking orders, and I don't question those orders. So when we are dealing with something of such a highly sensitive nature, which in this case is possibly something that may be extraterrestrial, I am here to just take orders and not question why. Okay.
So there was indeed then a protocol in place for whatever it was that crashed in Roswell. Is that true?
I can't comment on that.
Okay. And you just testified that you were a guy that just followed orders and did what you're told. True?
Yes.
Did any of the protocols or orders dealing with the Roswell crash say, hey, by the way, Major Marcel, you should take some of those materials to your house and show them to your family. Did it
No,
say that in there anywhere?
No, it did not.
Okay. So then you don't always follow orders, true?
I always follow orders. That night, in the excitement of the moment, I stepped outside what should have been a normal method of operation.
So you say the excitement of the moment. Sounds like the excitement of the moment clouded your judgment and you took the materials home. Would that be a true statement?
I knew that this was quite possibly the biggest event in human history. Yes, I did get a little excited.
Okay. So excited enough that you disregard orders. Withdrawn, Your Honor.
Objection.
Okay. All right. Let's discuss the materials that you were shown, that you're shown with during the Fort Worth press conference. Do you recall that?
I do.
Okay. And you testified that those materials were different than what you found at the ranch. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you, other than these photographs that you took and you gave to somebody else, do you personally have any physical evidence to support your claim that the materials were switched?
I cannot answer that question.
Okay. So you might have physical evidence.
I plead the fifth.
Okay. So, which technically, kind of a side note, that's at a criminal standard and we're in a civil trial, but I'm going to let it go. I'm going to let it go, Mr. Marcel.
But if I have broken protocol and could possibly be court-martialed, that would be criminal, and anything that I say right now could be used in such a procedure if it would happen in the future.
True, but you just told us about a minute and a half ago that you don't always follow orders and procedures. So how come today? How come here in this courtroom with this good judge here, you're going to follow the procedure, but the night of the crash, you chose not to?
Your Honor, can I answer that question fully? Thank you.
Go ahead.
I have always followed orders. My statement was that I didn't that one time.
Okay. So one time in your career, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page.
That's correct.
Right? Okay, one time. Now, Mr. Marcel, you've spoken publicly about the Roswell incident on several occasions over the years, haven't you?
We need to go back and finish the question that you asked, if that's okay, about the debris being different when I entered the office.
Oh, certainly. That's right. So you testified that what you saw in Fort Worth was different than what you initially saw in the debris field. Is that correct?
I knew that when I entered the office and saw the debris that was in the office was not what I collected at the debris site.
Okay. And then you took a picture with the debris there in Fort Worth, true?
I did.
And you weren't there alone. Presumably there were press folks there. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And some other military folks, and General Ramey, he was there?
He was there with his office staff, yes.
Okay. So when you did all that, you posted the pictures, you never told anybody in that room, hey, by the way, this is different stuff, correct?
I didn't, and may I expand?
Sure.
I follow orders. I was asked to go in and take pictures and pose with the debris that had been switched. I did what I was asked to do.
Okay. So you did what you were asked to do. Aside from that one night where we had so much excitement that your judgment was clouded and chose to take these materials home, but every other time you followed all the orders, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor. So, and that's how we'd sum it up. I skipped a couple little, parts, but, and one thing that I wouldn't call it a slick lawyer move, and it sort of is in a vacuum, only reading the cross on it. But what I did there, it was very intentional, the Mr. Marcel as opposed to Major Marcel. And if you go through the testimony with the believer's attorney, it's all very, oh yes, Major, and as soon as the defense gets there, it's boom, Mr. And you start, kind of working them down that way.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, what I find it's going back to my cousin Vinny, the defense's case doesn't hold water, right? And in the
Right.
case of Roswell, it doesn't hold water.
Yep. But
You
here,
are able to pick anything apart, and I think it would be difficult, both on direct and on cross, to turn the story around into a weather balloon, Project Mogul, crash test dummy scenario, when it is the Department of the Defense that has changed their story. The witnesses and everything else, going back to the Walter Hout memo, moving forward, has been very, very, very consistent.
Yeah, but except between the 93 and 02 affidavits, that's when he added.
Well, that's true. Like I said, that's with Roswell and Christopher. I'm so convinced of this that all we have to do here is look at the Department of Defense's position. We don't have to look at the witness's position. We don't have to bring any of that to the table.
Sure.
What we do have is just the Department of Defense's actions, statements, movements of debris, and everything, and the memos and everything else that was tied to it. That's the strength of the case.
Right. Well, it is a big strength of the case, but were we in a real courtroom, there's this pesky burden of proof, right? And any intellectually honest defense lawyer, so again, I'm a plaintiff lawyer, any defense lawyer will tell you their job is so much easier than the plaintiffs because we have the burden of proof. We actually have to prove something. The defense, poke a hole here and, oh yeah, Marcel, you're Mr. Rule follower, but boom, you took the stuff home. Hey, how?
Right, totally.
So from that regard, that's, you look at the defense guys.
Well, okay, so let's go. That is and you're right. A good attorney is going to absolutely point that one thing out.
Right.
And once you discredit a witness, what else can you believe from him, right?
Right.
Totally. But now, so my attorney, I get crossed, right? After you sit down, right? Okay. And he'll come up and say, yes, okay, you did break protocol that one time, but you also created witnesses. You showed your family this debris, didn't you? I did. And then you flip that back around, and now you can bring up the kids. You can bring in the wife. Did you guys see this debris? And turn it around once again, right? Wouldn't that be another tack of the boat?
And it would. And super splitting hairs here, but your attorney would have called you first. Okay? And since I wrote the book, your attorney is a real good attorney. And what you do on the plaintiff side, I'm bringing up about, question number 3, that you took this thing home. Because I'll tell you, as a plaintiff, every case has bad facts, right? And as the plaintiff attorney, if you don't get in front of those bad facts and couch them the way you wanted them couched, the defense will kill you, because now it looks like you're trying to cover something up and you're trying to be seen. So it's one of my first, after the niceties of name, rank, and serial number, I'm right into priors and things that I know are going to be an issue so that we can explain them away. But yes, and you're right. And that's in the book too, Marcel. So you got to weigh it as the attorney. Okay, well, suck that he didn't follow the orders, but he created these witnesses. And then another thing we really lack in any kind of trial book, Grisham or anybody else, is you don't know how the testimony is going to come in, right? You can have, if somehow you had the same client with the same injuries and the same everything, I would be looking at client A going, I can't put you on the stand. I can't. Jury would hate you, right? And then the guy, gal on the other side, a jury's going to love this person. So that credibility and likability of witnesses just can't come through. But I could if I wrote a 5,000 page book. But as far as, because that the credibility, the in-person stuff carries so much weight with the jurors and how they put their testimony in. And unfortunately, that's one thing we'll never know.
Well, the General Accounting Office, that's a great point. The General Accounting Office, and which the GAO, by the way, scares the crap out of anybody. Okay. They don't play. And so if they're going to do an audit and they've got a juice card, right? So when they jumped into the Roswell case, one of the interesting aspects of this is that they said, this is the GAO. Okay. This isn't MUFON. This isn't even Congress, right? It's the GAO, man. Mm-hmm. The GAO said they went through all of the branches of the military, all of the accounting, everything, the logistics wise, all the way back to 1947. Any records tied to Roswell, phone, billing, receipts, transports, information, personnel, all of it was destroyed. All of it.
It doesn't seem possible, does it?
Right. And the General Accounting Office, actually, I'm going to paraphrase, but they said something like that. Never before has every piece of anything tied to something been lost or destroyed. Right. But in the case of Roswell, we found nothing. And nothing. Phone records, telexes, right? And anything, any correspondence, any cables, any instructions, any memos, any flight records, any personnel, nothing. Now, what does that tell you? Is that possible at all? No, that's impossible unless, right, it's exactly what we think it is.
Right. And that's one of the challenges. Again, we can all think something. Can we prove it? To a legal standard, that's, you see it online all the time, little video, I'm going to sue this guy. And I'm looking at it going, good luck. Nothing's going to come of that. And interestingly, kind of hearkening back, when one of us was on the stand, I don't know who it was, but you were talking about the advances in technology right after Roswell. I know someone I'm very close to who ran the procurement project for the stealth project. And that person is now retired, but retired career military. And that person told me that there are components in the stealth that person believes came from an extraterrestrial source.
Yeah. I don't discount any of that. I say it almost every night on the show, but it goes without saying, I live next door to Skunk Works. It's right here. Cool. It's 1 mile. 1 mile. And I drive past it a couple of times. So it's 1 mile. Okay. If I'm heading in that direction, I'm going to drive past it. But Edwards is right up the street, about 5 or 7 miles that way. So right here we have NASA, we have Air Force Plant 42, we have Northrop Grumman, we have Skunk Works, all on one ginormous secure compound right up the street. Now, the most advanced aerospace testing and design in the world goes on right there. That's it. That's it. That's it. It's right up the street. So is there crazy stuff in the skies? Yes. Do I talk about it? Not really. It's uncool, right? Plus I live here. I don't need to get in any trouble. But this stuff goes on. And when you hear things like Ben Rich, and stuff making their comments about we have the technology to take ET home, Ben Rich being the former head of Skunk Works, right? And his book, Skunk Works, a great book, to say these things that, what they're working on down the street is 50 years ahead of what we see. I would say that in a general sense is to be true. You only have to, and I'm saying this in a very generalized form, you only have to give a good engineer or a good engineering team an idea. you don't have to give them proof of concept. You only have to give them the idea and let them run with it. So with a craft or something like that, you don't have to know how it operates. You only need the idea. Right? That's all. And then go and develop it yourself. Whether it is, Star Trek and warp drives, or Dick Tracy TV watches, or, communication devices on Star Trek, right? Just the idea. You only have to have the idea. Anti-gravity. You only have to have the idea and let these guys go and run with it. So you don't necessarily have to know how it operates. You just have to see it and have an idea, and then go in and build our own. And we have very brilliant people in this country.
I was going to say, thank heavens for men and women like those engineers out there. I'm a real good idea guy. Boy, I can cook up all kinds of stuff. My ability ends at this side of the technology, so I just admire the heck out of those engineers, whether it's from scratch or re-engineering or whatever the heck they do, because the world needs them and I couldn't do it.
Well, you look at somebody like Steve Jobs. Did Steve Jobs design the iPhone? No, he didn't. But he had, just throw an idea out there, and you got a brilliant team. And the next thing you know, you've got MP3 players and iPhones and touchscreens and iPads and look at the original Mac. These are just the mouse, right? To point and click on, and graphic design. These were just ideas, but then you just turn around and turn it into something else. And that goes seriously into the aerospace industry and where we are today. We are at the cusp of some very brilliant things. Did it come from crash retrievals? Man, that is such an easy fix for all of these technical leaps. I mean, it really is.
It answers a lot of questions.
It does.
Yeah.
It truly, it's Occam's razor, and I hate to go there so easily, but that's what Occam's razor is there for. Right. Let's just get to the easiest version of this. Printed circuit boards, optical, optical. Think about that. When we and the transistor. Now, I've read and watched in all the documentaries and all the books on the development of all of this stuff and how electricity was done. The ENIAC and the UNIVAC and computers and tubes and going from tubes to transistor. I worked for Bell Labs. I worked for Bell Labs for 3 years. I was right there, man. The spear tip of technology. I worked at Bell Labs, man. And I saw I wasn't some brilliant guy. I was just an artist in the art department in ED&D, but I was around some very brilliant engineers that I still talk to this day. And we're friends. I'm not saying that doesn't go down, but when you go back historically speaking, and you look at where we were in 1900 and where we were in 1947, the leaps, man, I mean, it's just absolutely insane what we went through. How did we get? I don't know, but it just seems like von Braun's boss, I'll think of his name here in a second, the other Nazi scientist, his boss, said that it all came from there. We had help. That's what he said. We had help. And just, I don't discount that. Do you, with all of the evidence and certainly the position that you're in now, do you believe that the United States is in possession of crashed retrievals?
I do. As you've been saying, I don't see how we're not, so I'm a believer, but again, is my evidence any better than anybody else? Nope. I know what we're told and kind of what we're allowed to see, and then we can draw our own conclusions. So again, might lose in court, but yeah, I believe the U.S. does.
Well, you're also used to unraveling evidence, and when you're on one side of the fence in court, you're battling with another side that is trying to cover up the stuff, and they don't want you to find out.
Right.
So with that kind of experience, is it possible for we could say government, but then you have the career individuals that are there that aren't necessarily elected, through transitional administrations. Is it possible to keep something like this covered up from elected officials and the actual government that is running things?
Anecdotally, it certainly seems to be, the case. And I don't have any, hard and fast, hey, this happened, that happened. But it certainly seems to me, as a 55-year-old man, lived in the United States my entire life, and I'm kind of plugged into the news and what's happening. It certainly seems to me that it would be possible. And probably, Jimmy, let's use you and me. There's a fighting chance, and we're in the DOD together. There's a fighting chance that of my rules, I don't want to know. Don't even tell me anything, And then let's kind of kick it back into a courtroom, because there is nothing worse than trying a case where the defendant, he's wrong, he or she is wrong, but they believe what they're saying, right? The easy intersection, he said, she said, green light kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
I would love it. Jimmy Church, you're the defendant. And if you're lying to me about the color of your light, I'm going to catch you 99 out of 100 times. And not that I'm smarter than you, but that's what I do. Mm-hmm. Now, if you say you're still wrong, but you believe that you had a green light, those cases are next to impossible, because you are as credible as my witnesses. You both are sincere in your beliefs. Right. So it's really hard. I'd way rather have a defendant that's lying to me. Right. So depending on this pool of witnesses that you put together, I could also imagine, there's a handful of people somewhere that know something, but getting your hands on those specific people, right, I would have to imagine virtually impossible. And everyone else would probably fall in that camp of genuinely, honestly going, no, right. And now you're forced to make that decision between two people who are seemingly telling the truth. So it would be an interesting wrinkle.
Well, yeah. And as a trial attorney, you must sit back when you hear somebody ask questions and cross and do whatever, where you sit back and go, they did it wrong. Damn it. I would have asked, attorneys are cocky. Okay. And you have to have doctors are the same way. I need an attorney that is totally self-centered and full of themselves. I need a doctor that thinks that way too, as well. I don't want to have somebody questioning their own abilities. And I don't want to, you don't want to hear that in surgery. Right. You don't want to have your doctor go, well, should I? What do you mean? You don't want that. But with the recent UAP hearings, as an attorney, what did you think about the questioning of, let's focus on David Grush, who raised his right hand and swore in, right, that his testimony was going to be true. What did you think about the questions that were asked?
I thought, generally speaking, and let me just back up. I think for the most part, congressional hearings, generally speaking, are poorly run. The questions are poor. The order is poor. It strikes me, I was watching one of the senator here just the other day who will remain nameless. And I'm not, as we've already established, you don't have to be a lawyer, right, to do what I do necessarily you'd be good at it. But you get these congressional reps, senators, and House folks that, again, as my mom would say, seem to just want to hear their heads rattle, and they ask poor questions, and they'll get kind of up to the edge of anything good and not have follow-up questions crafted, or even as you and I did to each other, you got to pin these guys, pin them and pin them and pin them and pin them until you get your answer. So they could all use a course in effective litigation. So, and that's just my take on the procedure of the whole thing.
How far I've made a lot of this. I have certainly stood behind this. How much is behind raising your right hand? How much does that matter?
Well, to me or to society?
Well, I want what it means to you, but then we do have the society version of this about ethics and morality and
Okay.
what comes into play here. And that's a character thing.
Right.
But for you, how important is it?
It's extremely important. You know, we have, you know, don't want to go down the road, but you got the three branches of government, this group, you know, barking about this group. And I know these are court orders I'm talking about, but it goes back. We have to have some semblance of order in our society. It just has to exist or it'll be the end of us. And one of the, it might seem small to some people, but the raising your right hand and swearing to tell the truth. We as people, we have to have something that we understand, something that brings some gravity to the situation. So to me, it's incredibly important. And again, if you want to raise your right hand, I'm good, and you're lying to me, 99 times out of 100, I'm going to catch you. And not only am I going to call you out for being a liar, then I'm going to call out the fact that you raised your right hand and swore to tell the truth. You know, so I think it's a small gesture and it's incredibly important.
Now, back to your point about what somebody believes to be true.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So with Grush, we had a dose of that, didn't we?
We did. And again, I didn't follow his word for word testimony, but I believe the summary that came out, a lot of good information, but the vast majority, at least what we heard, I do know he said there were some things that he couldn't answer, but again, it was a lot of hearsay. You know, well, I've talked to 47 people that work in the business and they all, come on, man. You know, so again, it gets us fired up. It gets us excited. It gets us interested, but what's really there?
Well, okay. So like I said, there was a lot of that there, but then there was the factual part of this where, and I've always said this, I'm not an attorney, but I do play one on TV. I'm pretty damn good at it.
You're very good.
And, which is thank you. Which is this. We have the facts and then we have the truth behind the facts. Right? So the facts.
Sure.
Roswell newspaper article, July 6th, right? 1947. That's a fact.
Fact. Yep.
Right? Okay. What's the truth behind that? That's a whole nother situation. And so with Grush, we have the facts of him stating he was told so-and-so. The facts of the case are his CV and his record, right? I mean, it doesn't get any, that dude is very accomplished.
Yep.
And that says an awful lot. So the facts are he should know how to ask a question and read through the bullshit. That's his job. That's his job, right? So if he's going to turn around and turn that into a statement under testimony, then that holds a certain amount of weight. Okay. All right. So, but let's put that aside. The other facts that he presented, which were direct and not hearsay, is he had the locations and the names. Okay. That he had turned those over to the IG and he was willing to give those to the members of Congress in a skiff. That's where we are breaking new ground, aren't we? It's never been like that before.
Yes, absolutely. And you know that going back to Grush and his CV, right? You're exactly right. And that's one of the things, you know, is it Commander Fravor, you know, with his tic-tac, same thing. So that's one area that's really, really been improving is the quality of the witnesses, right? So you can still have questions, but I'd sure much be rather, you know, questioning an F-16 pilot than, you know, Billy on the corner who saw something up in the sky, right?
Sure.
Well, both from their observation ability and, again, the credibility, right? Yeah, I'm a big believer. You take these lifetime career guys, right? Why are they going to jeopardize that? But, and I know where you're going to go with this. I was going to throw a bone to General Ramey. Same thing. Why is good old General Ramey going to jeopardize, you know, his career? So, you know, you kind of, if we're going to be consistent and go, well, look at these credentials. Ramey was no slouch himself, and he said this.
Well, and so what does the public do with this? Do you feel the tide is turning? Obviously, it's an easier subject to talk about, more so than any other time in history. We've got that going for us. But how is the public starting to perceive this, where it is now a Capitol Hill situation and hearings, and we've got different senators and representatives looking into this, going on the record?
Mm-hmm.
Is this because the atmosphere has changed, or that elected officials are pissed off because it's something that's not in their control and they're being blindsided about this?
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean, I'm sure it's all of the above. Society just, for whatever. And I'm not going to have the exact number, but you see the polls about the number of people that believe that there's some sort of extraterrestrial life, right? That number is now in the majority. And it almost feels like a lot of this pushback, because what are the theories that we've heard over the years why there can't be disclosure? Oh, it'll upend world religions. It'll upend, all the militaries, this, that, and the other thing. It's almost to the point now, at least what I see anecdotally, people don't even care. They're like, yeah, it's real. And so what? Let's go on with our lives. Now, it doesn't do anything for the folks that you mentioned, previously, abductees and whatnot, and their experiences. However, you're more involved in this world than I am, but I talk to lots of UFO people and even the non-UFO people that I've given, my book to, the mailman comes into the law office. Without fail, every one of them, if they don't know about it, the reaction has been, oh, UFOs. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I like you, and I'll have conversations. And I have yet to talk to anyone that is like straight up, no, they're not real. I don't believe them.
Who do you think? I love that. But who do you think is largely responsible for that change in the public tone? Is it the government? Is it the media? Is it Hollywood? Is it the entertainment industry? Is it Marvel and the Marvel universe? What's most responsible for this change in the public's attitude when it comes to UFOs?
Jimmy, I don't know if this is the answer or not. However, look at all the things that were not acceptable in the 70s, right? And now here we are in 25 and whatever, right? Is it just part and parcel of our society? Maybe. And I'm no sociologist, but are people anymore just so self-focused that whatever's going on out here, we don't care so much? And again, that'd be some big sociological study that I didn't do. And so I don't know why. And I'm sure part of it that feeds it is the internet and the constant need for 24/7 content, and stories can, spread, that kind of thing. I would imagine the internet probably played a role in that, in people's desire. Everybody wants information now, and it's always there. Whatever you want to know, right, you can find out right now. So maybe that's been kind of feeding it a long festering, oh, you can't know anything about it. And now people are pissed because we can find out pretty much 95% of the other stuff we want to find out. But I don't know if that's the reason, but might be part of it.
I asked this question with just about every guest. It doesn't matter what the background is, but because we're all fundamentally the same. And that is Hollywood doing the best job that they can with this subject? We all watch the movies. One of the, you want something greenlit? I live in Hollywood, right? So you want something greenlit? Man, alien invasion movie. And humans win by shooting arrows, right? Okay. All right. Greenlit. And how many of those movies have we seen? Well, and then there's a lot of other, and I'm talking about, drama, science fiction, not documentaries. And, which that's a whole nother proliferation of media that has hit us. But when it comes to science fiction and the way aliens are perceived onto the public, is Hollywood doing a good enough job? Should they do something differently with that? Or is it okay?
They can do better, and they are working to do better. I'm sure it read my bio. I'm sure you're familiar with the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance.
I am.
And what that is, for your listeners, is really blending of scientists and researchers and folks to a very low extent, like me doing the research and this kind of work, blending it with the talent, if you will, the creatives in Hollywood to try to create a story with more continuity, so that we're putting together a more accurate, more realistic, from what we know, sort of presentation on aliens and extraterrestrials. So one, that is already currently going on. And I think it's good. A similar, and I haven't thought about this topic for several years, but a similar yet unrelated topic to that is, are you familiar with the festooning that NASA does on the various rovers that go up on the moon?
I am.
Yeah. So that festooning, when I first was reading about this, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, my opinion, there are, and I forget the manufacturer now, but I know on one of the tires on one of the rovers essentially said, whatever the company was, fade to black, right? And so when the tires would rotate on the moon's surface, well, there's fade to black stuff, which would be cool, don't get me wrong. But my take on that is every opportunity that we have, it shouldn't be commercialized. It shouldn't be pushing everything should be with the thought of, if we encounter an extraterrestrial, what's the friendliest, kindest, most welcoming, wonderful thing we can do? And I'm just here to tell you, putting, Firestone on your tire tread because you're festooning your devices, it just feels inappropriate to me. It really, we need to go back to the golden plates and the DNA and some of that is included on the rovers as well. But again, you want to run into an extraterrestrial and be promoting your tires, or do you want to be promoting peace?
Well, I've thought about that. One of the things that okay, so check this out before we run out of time. I want to get this thought out. We always, and this includes myself personally, but these clean uniforms that ET has, right? Very rarely do we hear of a symbol or something on it, right? What if ET steps off on camera, White House lawn, right? Sure. With a frigging Formula One driver's suit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With all the branding on it. All the branding on it, and because our spacesuits are approaching that.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the SpaceX space. I mean, it's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And,
if that were the case, I can guarantee you what my first question would be. What are your rates? Right? I would want to have my law firm name slapped right out.
Yeah. I want to get fade to black. How much for a fade to black sticker on your craft?
Right, exactly.
On the front of it. On the front. Because and here, if ET, and this is why I think I have a twisted mind, but ET has been observing us for a very long time. They know what we would expect, right?
Sure.
And what would not freak us out. So why not have that commercialization, right? Where they approach and they've got a frigging Walmart logo on the side of their craft. What's wrong with that?
That sounds silly, but think I'll tell you, I'd be way less scared of a UFO that says Walmart on. I'm like, what the hell? Maybe I might even approach it.
Why wouldn't ET step off the craft, right? Seriously, step off the craft and start live streaming. Okay, we're here on Earth. Yeah. Check this out.
Earth flags.
Yeah. Why? That would immediately put us in our comfort zone.
Yeah, for sure. That would be fun. That's how I'm going to choose to imagine it from now on too, with the Walmart. Right?
It'll be Elvis, Walmart, and live streaming. And we would be Kardashians, Walmart, and live streaming, and we would be totally comfortable with it.
Yeah, it's our buddies, the aliens.
Chris, what a great show tonight, my man. What else are you working on?
I am working. I've got an article coming out in next month's MUFON journal regarding disinformation agents. And I've recapped some popular cases over the years of disinformation, and then kind of what they, because that's another one of those terms, disinformation agent. Well, people don't really know exactly what it means. So it's some insight into that and a couple of interesting cases historically, one in particular, the United States, used disinformation campaigns and kind of how it came to light. So that's what I'm writing on right now.
And who was Lex?
Oh, Lex Astrom?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is
I'm giving you an opportunity to explain yourself.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Maritime law is essentially codified. Maritime law is so old, it's sort of built up on customs starting over in Egypt, and it's all sort of cataloged in what they call lex maritima, maritime law. So with my space law stuff, I took the URL Lex Astrom, Law of the Stars, quite a few years ago, and I have Lex Astrom Facebook page. Anyway, so the judge in my book is the Honorable Lex Astrom. So he's the Law of the Stars.
I love it.
Thank you.
Lex's website is below, everybody. And we've got it over on our website and throughout social media. Chris, thank you so much. And I look forward to our next trial. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Perfect night on the show, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
Will do. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you so much. Chris Johnston, JD. That was a fun night on the show, wasn't it? That was a perfect night on the show. I had a lot of fun. And what am I doing tomorrow night? Oh, man, I'm going to have to look this up. Tomorrow night, Dr. Mark Carlotto is with us tomorrow night. We're talking about his book, An Inconvenient Theory. That is tomorrow night. Wednesday night is our once a month AMA AJA, where you get to ask me anything. Then, of course, Thursday night, we are taking the night off. I will be out of contact in the desert along with a bunch of you. So for now, all I've got is go back, Lee. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.